Hello and welcome to another Warcraft the audio commentary. Today, guys, we're going to be watching another Undead vs. Human game. We watched one yesterday. Let's watch another, and mainly because I'm very interested to see how the metagame has kind of shifted and whether or not what we saw yesterday is something that's kind of the norm today. So what we're going to find out is by watching this game. So let's go ahead and introduce our players. As the red human spawning on the lower right part of Terranus stand is going to be Xiaokai, playing for TCL and WFC. And then over here on the upper left, we're going to have WFZ, one of my favorite undead players, playing as the green undead in the upper left. Kind of redundant information, but who cares? Anyway, so the main thing I'm interested in finding out today is going to be what kind of overarching strategies are we going to be seeing from these players. Now, the Undead player from yesterday, if you haven't seen that game, you really should check it out. It was a really good game. But the Undead player from yesterday, he played a very reactive style. Okay, he started with that destro push and turned it into the wagon push when that destro push failed. And the human player was playing, he was definitely leading the strategy the whole time. He was weaving, I don't know what you would say, he was playing his hand, right, and he was showing very little. And so the undead, he was like, well, he's not really doing anything yet, so what is his plan? I didn't know what his plan was. His plan turned out to be some very cool harass strategy that came so close to working. I feel like I'm spoiling. I'll have to put like a spoiler tag before we get to this point, so hopefully by now you should have seen the annotations, and if you have the annotations off, I'm so sorry. But anyway, we have to talk about it. And so that's the goal today. So we're going to see a lot of the same stuff that we've always seen in Warcraft. We're not always, but the things that have evolved over time, such as, you know, scouting and chasing with a footman, and just normal stuff. But this, of course, is a big telltale sign. It's a completely different strategy from what we saw in the human yesterday. And the human's play yesterday certainly was very, and that was a very nice deny on that acolyte right there by using the creep. So that way this arc, or the Mountain King, in fact. So this is a completely different strategy. This is going to be something more standard to what I'm used to seeing here. And he's going to be a Mountain King trying to creep up, get to level 2, get to level 3, whatever. The question is going to be, is he going for the expansion? Is he going for the tech? We'll find out. And before we even look for that, let's see how this harass is going to go. He's going to quill the Mountain King. It's an interesting choice. It means he's definitely going to have to build a shop at some point, and he's already tanking on the Mountain King anyway. The Mountain King is a string hero. He's got a lot of life. But again, it's not going to last you that long without some kind of regeneration. He did get a nice steal on one of those creeps with a coil, 20 XP to him, 20 less XP to the Mountain King. Not really at this point in the game a big deal because the Mountain King, he's already level 2. So not really a huge thing. Again, being level 2 though for a Mountain King's not a huge deal either. He wants to hit level 3. Level 2 can be good if you're trying to stop like a goal push, and you can have clap, you can have bash, depending on, they're okay things to have. They're certainly not something that's worth underestimating, but again, they're not super game-changing usually. They can be. Here comes a really nice thing. Having that one footman right here allows him to block in the front. It's not going to pull off the surround this time, but it's a huge help. You can't be throwing long-range bolts and expecting to be landing surrounds unless you have at least one guy out there who can stand in the front to help block. And even then, it's still not reliable, but it's going to give you a much better chance. And here we're going to see the undead player. He's trying to do a creep jack. He's got fiends out. He's decided to go fiends. He has backpack research, so he's brought an extra rod of necromancy over here for him. That's going to allow him to start spamming these skeletons. His goal here, as you can see, he's focusing on the human player's units. He's not trying to get the creep jacks. Well, he is with the coils, but not with the fiend. The fiend is sitting there trying to harass, and that's pulled out the footman over here, at least 2 footmen. And as that creep gets finished, all of these units are going to come out here and try to fight. With the second fiend out here on battle, it means he can basically kite and do a lot of damage. He can even kill a footman if he can get it to 100 HP or less for the coil, but the human player is going to be a little too wise for that, and he's going to run that footman back at 113 and let that guy start to regenerate up a little bit. And over here, he's going to try to keep his Mountain King in this area. He wants to protect the peasants, but also he really wanted to get that Forest Troll Shadow Priest. And that's going to provide him a lot of that regeneration that he needs. And ultimately, that means he's probably not going to need a shot for a little bit longer. And really, what I was saying earlier, I thought he was going to be going for more harass on the Mountain King. And I think in some cases you can. And so that first coil was kind of a setup. Like, well, if things go in a certain way, then I can start doing a lot of damage to your Mountain King. Things didn't really go in that way where the Mountain King would take a lot of damage from creeps. So, you know, the human player played it pretty well. But again, I don't know if that's something that could actually happen normally in any reliable sense. So it might have just been that he wanted to throw that first death coil because you had the mana and he was just itching to. I don't know. I'll be honest, I really don't. But having said that, we're going to go ahead and see level 3 on the Mountain King, which means he's going to have some devastating Mountain King bolts, storm bolts, I couldn't get the word out, coming out his way. He's easily going to be able to pick off this fiend, and there it goes. Down it is. That it brings him down to 2 fiends that are going to retreat and try to get out of here. We see a couple of these skeletons up here. They're trying to work on these peasants. Killing the peasants is really key to delaying the expansion. You don't really need to kill anything else if you can kill the peasants, but if you can't kill if you focus on killing the peasants, essentially that means your army is going to be picked apart. And with the Mountain King at level 3, even if you're trying to kill anything here, your army is definitely going to get picked apart. He can just chase down fiends with Stormbolt. And so the Undead did a very wise thing, said, you know what, this one fiend, it's down, I can't say it. This one fiend is down, it's going to die. He ran it off in an opposite direction from his other fiends, and that allowed them to escape. If you run all your fiends away in the same direction, that Mountain King is going to bolt one, he's going to kill it, he's going to bolt it 2 or 3 times if he needs to, but really 2 is all that you ever need if you only have level 1 Death Knight, because you don't have the Unholy Aura to move them faster, and you don't have level 2 coils to really offset the damage coming onto them. So really, it's going to be 2 bolts per fiend, and he can take one down and then just chase another one. So that's why you have to separate them. You have to run them in different directions, and that's what the Undead player did. It worked really well. Over here we can see the Mountain King. He's just doing a little bit of scouting, saying, you know, a lot of times, sometimes you'll see, well, I say a lot of times, sometimes you'll see players come over there with ghouls and just kind of creep out, and that would be a great target to get a bolt off on, and, you know, maybe steal the items. Not gonna get the items, but maybe to get the tome in this case, because there is backpack. However, we will see that Sapphire Teleportation, a really great pickup on the Mountain King. He knew what was likely gonna happen. He knew that there was a good chance when he took all of his army away from this expansion that the Undead player would come over here and try to do something. And in fact, he's gonna get to cancel off on the expansion, which is absolutely fantastic, especially for how badly the early game, I would say, went for the Undead player. I believe that's his 3rd fiend he's lost so far, but there's only 1 peasant up here currently, and he's very low on life, but he's gonna finish that Arcane Vault. The Arcane Vault is going to allow him to buy Clarities, which means he's going to have more mana from more, there you go, see one of the Clarities, but for more mana, more Storm Bolts. It's really good to have that, and you got to have mana as a Mountain King user. You're throwing those bolts out, they're so important, they do so much damage, and they provide a really good stun. So these things are all really good. But over here, we're going to see the Undead player. He's kind of been working on his tech. He's up at tier 2 now. He's got that Slaughterhouse going up right here. He's really just kind of committing to a longer tier 2. He has to. Well, I say he has to. He doesn't have to. He could have gone for, if he wanted to, a Destro push, which might have worked, and it might not have worked. But he's already done such a good job with delaying this expansion, and really that was a great turnaround point in the game, because even though the human player had kind of prepared for it by buying that Sapphire Teleportation and keeping his footmen kind of in a rough vicinity that they could run back fairly quickly, when he got hit, I don't think he was expecting that to happen at that particular time. Maybe he was, it just didn't look like he was, and it looked like it did a lot of damage. I mean, it took them down to just that 1 peasant, and he had to cancel the expansion halfway through. Just not what you want, especially if you're speed building it with multiple peasants. You just lose a lot of resources that way. And he's still on tier 1, and he's got mercenaries, so he can kind of fight, but this is just going to go so well. With that frost armor out, it just makes it so much harder to kill things. He has the burrow researched. He does not have a dust on the Mountain King, so there's no way he's going to be able to kill those unless he can get some reveals off, and since he hasn't crept out one of the laboratories and put up the farm there, he doesn't have that option either. He's gone for this round on the Lich, and the Lich, I think, is surrounded. He's trying to maybe get some mana. He bought a mana potion on the Death Knight. He only has level 1 Death Knight or Death Coil, however, unfortunately for him, so even though he gets the Death Coil off, it just isn't enough to actually do anything to keep that Lich alive. Just delay a little bit, which is probably enough to get a kill on a footman, maybe 2, but it looks like he's not even going to bother with that. He's going to say, you know what, I need to creep, I need my experience, and really I could use items. So these are all good things for him, and it's really good. Now the question is he going to go for a tech, or is he going to really go for a big tier 2 push? He's got options here, and this is definitely going to be a critical point in the game, because if his opponent decides he wants to go for like a fast tech to tier 3, and you go for destroyers, you have to finish them off. Like, you have to, otherwise those flying machines, probably going to be a big problem for you. Again, like I said yesterday, human is definitely at their best in the late game against undead. They're definitely at their worst in the early game, and that's, you know, that's how we can see expansions that even when the human has a much bigger army getting canceled, it's just something that happens. Humans are kind of, they're not, I wouldn't say weak in the early game, but they're vulnerable in the early game, and you have to play really good. You have to predict what the undead's going to do, and you have to know what you're doing in order to really live through the early game and transition. And that's why a big tier 2 push is one of those kind of deadly things, because if you're not prepared for it, then you're in a lot of trouble. And so this is one of those situations where it's kind of a big push, but the human has been preparing for it. He's been buying mud golems, he's been buying those mercenaries, he's making footmen, or I don't know if he's been making footmen, but he's got a sizable footman army. Footmen are not necessarily something he needs right now because there is frost armor out. They're still good for surrounding units, but they're not that great. I think the slows here coming from those mud golems and the bolts are really what's going to actually allow him to do a lot of damage. And Ogre Mauler, absolutely a great choice, does a really good job against fiends that are slowed or stunned. And here come those militia and also a goblin shredder to come fight. The human player knows this is critical. If he loses this fight, then he is going to take so much damage. He might even lose that expansion. So he has to win this fight because he knows the undead player is committing to this big tier 2 pushes. A lot of his resources are tied up, and he can afford to bring in militia. He can afford to bring in extra mercenaries. He can afford to bring in a shredder to fight. He's got a zeppelin over here, which has actually been able to save that shredder, which is really nice. We're seeing a sacrificial skull be used right here, and he's got a meat wagon as well. So the undead player, he's really going all out on this. He's going to try to kill that shredder. It's not going to be able to quite happen. It's just going to be microed a little bit, and he can even use that shredder to take down that meat wagon, no problem, if there's nobody going up there to actually deal with that. Here comes a reveal from the human player to go down on those burrowed crypt fiends. However, it's going to get a death coil, and he is going to be maybe able to live. He has been bashed. He's trying to get out of there. This meat wagon, unfortunately, going to end up probably going down to that shredder. It looks possible the Lich kind of went for it, but nope, just didn't chase it far enough, and the wagon does go down, and that shredder lives at 28 life, but it does look like the Death Knight is going to come over here and kill it for level 4, which is pretty good. And the human player, or the undead player now, is just going to go over here and devastate the human player's economy at this expansion. When you've put so many resources into an expansion, having the line killed like this is really not good, and there's not really a lot of damage being done to the undead player. As you can see, he's trying to kill that ghoul with the arcane tower, but it's just not doing enough damage, and he is probably going to be able to easily send that ghoul back to his base and keep on getting lumber out of it. He could have coiled it, but coiling the fiends a lot more important. Here comes a teleport in from the Death Knight, or from the Mountain King. In fact, it's not even a actual full TP, it's just the staff. He's going to probably try to chase down that ghoul if he can. He knows it's over there. He wants to get it. He wants to have a little bit more experience. If he can get level 5, he has level 3 bolts. And if you have level 3 bolt, you can also say pick up a blood mage and start doing banished bolts and just one-shotting fiends. So it's really a big level. You really want to have that if you can. And also, not only all of that, he's got a big potion of invulnerability. He can come in and just start whacking on acolytes, although it does look like that's blocked off pretty well. So that's probably not going to happen. And really, it would be a waste of the potion of invulnerability. I don't know why I was even thinking that in my head. That would make no sense whatsoever. Don't ever use that on acolytes. It's going to be a lot better in a fight. I got to talking. I was like, yeah, he could totally do that. I mean, he could, but yeah, that would be bad. Anyway, so the undead player, he is taking out the expansion. He's coming down to the human player's main base, and it's very questionable what's going to happen at this point, but it looks like the human player is at a big disadvantage. We're going to see a Halls of the Dead tech still. So the undead player still isn't interested in going for tier 3. He's just wanting to push this big tier 2 advantage that he currently has. And with this many fiends, the only hope I can see the human player having here is if he can get level 5 on this Mountain King. And there it is, but he's still going to have to buy a lot of time, and possibly we're going to see some sappers coming in, which are not unlikely. The undead player, does he have the resources for it? I don't know. He could buy them. If he felt like buying some sappers, he could. He could also kill the farm if he wanted to. Gonna pick up the shredder just to go ahead and take out that farm, and it's also a battle unit that he could definitely use. You can't bolt a shredder. That's one of the big nice things. You can't slow a shredder. Well, I don't think you can. I've never tried, actually, now that I think about it, but I don't think you can slow a shredder either. It does have magic immunity, I believe. It's mechanical. I don't know. I don't know. If you know, put a comment down. Say, this is what you can do. Don't be a dummy. Anyway, so this is the fight we're seeing right now. Militia have been called in. Of course, he's going to keep those 5 on gold if you can, because if you lose your gold income like completely in a fight, then you're just not going to be able to compete in the next fight. That's just the way it goes. One thing that we could still see Burrow being used for here is to dodge bolts, possibly, but the timing would have to be precise. It would be very unlikely with this if the Mountain King's only focusing on guys that he's attacking in melee range. It's almost impossible. But this is looking pretty good. I would still say it looks pretty good for the human or the undead player. I think the human player is not completely out of it. I would definitely not say he's completely out of it, because he killed a lot of the undead's army. And that's why it's like, is the undead player still in the lead? He's lost a lot of his army, but he's done so much devastating damage to the economy over here of the human player. But at the same time, not really, Not really, because even though he's taking out the expansion, and even though he's killed a bunch of peasants, you know, this is a map with shredders on it. Those peasants that he's killing, they're not gold peasants, they're lumber peasants. You can lose lumber peasants on a map with a shredder because you can buy a shredder and have plenty of wood. So it's questionable. It's certainly questionable as to who's in the lead, but I would still put the undead because, again, he's got this. In order for him to lose, he has to lose this army. The human has to push this back somehow. He has to repel the attack. And he can do that using Banish Bolt combo to get rid of all the lower HP guys, but he still has to somehow deal with these heroes. So that's going to be an interesting spot as well. But there is an Arcane Vault up for the human player, so there's a lot he can do. And he missed the Banish Bolt on that Fiend. That's a really big deal. You really can't afford to do that in this situation. Now is a great time to call everybody to militia, and there's a great use of that potion of invulnerability. Here's a great way to try to repel the fight. Another Fiend going down. This Shredder is in a lot of trouble as well. We have another Fiend up here. This guy in the back is a human Ogre Mauler going for a statue. He probably should retreat right now so he doesn't die. But the undead player, he's saying, you know what? You can buy mercenaries. I can buy mercenaries too. And not only can I, maybe I even should, because an Ogre Mauler has a lot more life than a Fiend does. And if you Banish Bolt it, it's not going to die, whereas a Fiend will. So there's definitely advantages there, but it's certainly looking like the human player, he's just run out of steam. I would say at this point, undead solidly in the lead. It looks that way. I mean, almost all of these peasants have died. I can't imagine the human player being able to turn this out or turn this around, but he's put up quite a great effort this game. And he's not going to give up, it looks like. He's just going to keep fighting. I mean, I don't know. Is it a bad decision? I mean, could he turn this around? He could. Maybe. Probably not, though. If he loses that, he's definitely gonna die. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking at this point. But I would say this is game over. They're probably talking about the next map in their series. I don't know how WFC works at the moment. Maybe they're just talking about the game. But it was an entertaining game. I certainly enjoyed it. The human player, he just couldn't seem to bring himself back into the game this time. He tried. He's still trying. You know, he's got that incredibly powerful Banish Bolt combo, but it only works really on Fiends. I mean, it could go for the heroes. You could kill the Lich with it, maybe. I mean, he's not gonna be able to quite do it with one shot. He'd have to get a few hits in. But he's just not in the kind of situation he needs to be able to win this. Definitely not. So the game's over. So that's this game. That's the game yesterday. So we've done 2 games in 2 days. That feels pretty good. Still getting back into the whole casting thing, so don't hate me. I'm also very rusty about Warcraft, so a lot of things I should have known off the bat and I didn't. All I can do is say sorry. But anyway, so that's the game. We're gonna go ahead and fast forward through the rest of it at, we'll say, 5x speed watch. I guess he's just trying to wait until he loses his hero or something here. We'll find out what happens. Try to watch this from the Fiend Cam. Fiend Cam says hello. The Blood Mage goes down, and GG is called! What a great game. So thanks for watching, everyone. I will definitely have to see you guys next time, which should be probably tomorrow, because I'm awesome. Goodbye!